Hello and welcome back to the B2B Power Hour. Morgan, how, what are you doing here? What? He's not on the screen anymore.
What are we doing here? That's the main question. Like we're near Harvard. We're in Cambridge ish right now. So, welcome to the B2B Power Hour. Hi everyone. Thanks for joining.
It is definitely a different experience. And actually, just in case you guys are watching, because you are, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
This is a recording.
Yeah.
We will be in the comments, hopefully, because we're going to be on a flight back home. And so this might be a little bit different experience, but this got prompted by one of our sessions that we did recently. And it made us realize that social selling is very misunderstood.
Goodness, is it misunderstood? It's actually interesting. The more that we talk with companies and we work with companies, to see like the misconceptions, and especially like social selling is marketing. So this is an impromptu session, an impromptu recording. Welcome. Thanks for having us. We're going to talk through some important and interesting topics we've been seeing recently, as we hope we normally do on the B2B Power Hour. And we'll be in the comments chatting about stuff. So we'll see you in there. So Nick, what's marketing's job when it comes to social selling?
For a second, I thought you were going to leave it at, what is marketing's job? And I
What's
was like,
marketing's
whoa,
job?
that's a dangerous prompt. I think the thing that I keep seeing more often than not is people keep thinking that social selling is content marketing or social media marketing. They don't realize there is so much more than just posting content. And it's the reason why people aren't getting success, because they're like, oh, I have building my personal brand. I'm doing my content, but it's not working at flow. It's not creating inbound. It's not really doing much. So I'm going to go back to cold calling, emailing, because that's how I get meetings and that's how I put points on the scoreboard so my boss knows I'm working. I think that's really what it comes down to is people need those short-term wins, or realistically, they're not going to hit quota and they're going to get fired.
Yeah.
And so the way that most people are teaching social selling isn't social selling. Just plain and simple. It's the reason it doesn't work is because it's actually not what people are saying it is. It's just content marketing and it's personal branding. And that's why a lot of salespeople, as we found out, don't want to do it, is because they can't prove that they're working. The workflow doesn't work to their advantage, and it doesn't open deals faster. It doesn't open more deals at all. If anything, it just creates more work and wastes more time.
And they're like, oh God, now I have to write content 30 minutes a day.
What was one of your biggest, when it comes to this, what was one of your biggest takeaways from yesterday?
So, I mean, one of the things that I continue to see, at least, is that marketing teams can support sellers so much, but they don't, because content marketers generally aren't, I don't know, like focused on, oh, Nick wants me to scoot over.
There we go.
Because content marketers aren't used to preparing content for an individual seller, or helping them create frameworks to write better content, or I mean, all of the things that you have to do if you're creating content on social as an individual. Most marketing teams are so used to like speaking to a brand voice, or putting out like webinar content or events, or here's a recent blog post or funding announcement, or all this sort of like very top level promotional brand awareness stuff. And when it comes to social, content needs to be a little more dialed in. Especially if it's an individual seller posting that content. That content should speak to pains and problems and the status quo, and it should tell stories. And people should engage with each other over those stories. You're basically doing like a one-to-many nurture sequence inside the algorithm. The problem is most marketers have no experience or understanding about how to run a one-to-many nurture sequence in an algorithm or not, right? Like that's, as a digital marketer, a lot of my stuff was top of funnel, or MQL sort of stuff.
Can I give marketing it out for a second? Just
Sure.
I want to continue because I love where you're going with this. But I think a lot of marketing gets forced into this transactional mindset. And so one of the reasons why when we work with these teams of sellers is they're like, well, marketing should own it. But all marketing is going to do is create leads.
Yes.
And the problem with that is that it doesn't answer the credibility crisis that we're going through.
Mm.
And when you're dealing with enterprise level buyers, it doesn't aid in the buying process either. It's very cheap and it actually discredits the whole process.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that marketing can't do this, because we've worked with some incredible marketers that get it. And so I don't actually think the question is sales or marketing. It's who has a more modern approach that really understands the buyer and the problems that they're solving and the best ways to get in front of those buyers in a way that they can't ignore.
So good. Honestly, clip that if you're a marketer, send it to your boss. Be like, hey, Nick told us to do this. We need to do it. It's true though, because can I just make a comment? Actually, holding this microphone and doing this in person is always hilarious and fun and different. We hope you're having fun here today. Anyways, I think the problem that marketing teams face, and actually go-to-market teams face when rolling out a social selling program, is that a lot of people think it's marketing's job to do social selling. And I don't think that's true. I think marketing's job is, once again, to drive competitive advantage in the marketplace and create demand.
I used to think it was marketing's job.
Yeah, I mean, I used to see the argument for it being marketing's job because most people think, oh, social selling is about content. And if you think social selling is just about content, then you're going to think, oh, this is marketing's job because they create a lot of content.
Yeah.
And there are content writers. But social selling is not just content, obviously. And there's so much more that goes into social selling than just writing content. In fact, writing content is like stage 3, not stage 1. And then that means that social selling doesn't or shouldn't be owned by the marketing team. It probably should be owned by an enablement team, preferably actually embedded with sales managers, I think, in our experience. But I'm going to let him.
So then there's the other side of this, where when sales owns it, the first thing they always ask us is, so how do we run account-based?
Oh, yeah.
How do we get in front of the people that we want to get in front of? What if they're not on LinkedIn? What if I told you that's the complete wrong mindset and that's why you're failing? I don't know, hot take. You're using social wrong.
Right.
Social should not be treated like email and cold calling. And actually, quite frankly, the reason why it's failing is because you failed to show up in the first place. You never made an account list that you then prioritized, then that you picked out the right personas based on knowledge that you have from past deals that you've won and lost. You're trying to scale luck and you're rolling a crapshoot. And so instead of doing the hard work that takes too long, what do? Let's load up a sequencer and let's just go and throw 1,000 at it instead of 1. And so the whole mindset is wrong. This is where it's all falling apart. So it was funny. Our chat yesterday. So somebody asked us, well, what if LinkedIn died tomorrow? Would you guys be okay? And I asked Morgan after, because I was like, we'll be fine. And I was like, did I come off really cocky when I said that?
No.
But it's a question we ask ourselves all the time. But we realize when you look at our model, the way we designed it is channel selection is last.
Channel selection is last.
Like we're 80% through our process when we hit channel selection. LinkedIn isn't all of what we do. And we realize this through trial and error that this is why it all falls apart.
Well, but like, that's the other conceit here, which is that as a seller in the remote sales era, in the digital sales era, you're not only using one channel. Like in 2002,
wouldn't it be so much easier?
It would be so much easier if you only used one channel.
You get the first person when you come in and you nail it and you get that decision maker and it's like, use this golden phrase and it's just done. Wouldn't that be just so nice?
It'd be so nice. But that's not the reality in the remote sales era. Because like in 2002, sure, you could walk into an office and like make a sale.
Hey, you do your pop-in?
Right, do your pop-in. Hi.
Those work.
Yeah, I imagine. I'm that. But like in the remote sales era, and this is what I think we see too often, is people become so dependent on an individual channel that then they abuse it, right? So they say, oh, I got to call everybody, or oh, I got to email everybody, or
I gotta throw them into a nurture sequence.
I got to do a nurture sequence. I got to send them connects and pitches and DMs and all the like. This is my only option I'm ever going to use to get in front of my prospect. Obviously, when we say it aloud, it sounds ridiculous. But the number of times that we see sales organizations and individual sellers thinking like, oh, if I use social, then I only use social. It's like, well, do you only use phone? Obviously not. Social can just be a part of the routine that you're putting together. It can be a part of your workflow. It's not the only channel. But I think this is what compounds the problem is if you think social is only about content, or social selling or social prospecting is only about creating content, then you're thinking, oh God, that's a lot of time. How am I building an audience? How am I getting my ICP? All the other things. And so then it feels like this big weight, when in reality, content, again, is like stage 3. There's a lot of other things that you do before that on social that you can layer in with your other channels.
Well, it's even like when we started doing some of our branding work, we wrote social prospecting as your primary channel.
Yeah.
That wasn't by accident.
No.
But I think going back to all these workflows and like all of the stuff that we've talked about in the past week, and we've really dove into like enterprise client sessions, is they're not asking the right questions. It's like, even if you guys watch the show with Josh Braun, we were talking about list building and the importance of list building and prioritization. And the people in the comments were saying, yeah, but what about my messaging? You can't have messaging until you know your industry vertical. You can't have messaging until you know your personas and the demographics that you're targeting in those companies. And I think that's even why when people ask me about account base, I said, I only asked 2 questions. Who are the 5 to 10 people that need to know you exist in that company? And what do they specifically need to know before they'll ask you for a meeting or buy? And if you think of vampire sales and throw that in as a fun, we're salespeople, we're competitive.
Yeah.
So if you're gamifying it and you're never pitching and you're only seeking to get closer to the truth with every conversation, and every question you ask, every state you make is guiding that conversation to get them to ask you what you do or to get them to invite you to pitch. There's a way to do this isn't salesy. There's a way to do this is very human. We all have a job that needs to be done. And I feel like we're going back to basics, but like, we all have a job that needs to be done. The more we know about our client, our customer, our prospect's job, and then what did Josh call it? That no good.
Oh, very terrible problem.
Very terrible problem. The more we know about that, the better it is, because now we're tapping into their frustration. And now we can quantify that in a way that when we send a message or we start a conversation, whether it's on the street, in the comments, slip it in the DMs, on the phone, it's relevant. And it grabs their attention because you're tapping into something that's going on in their day-to-day. And it's almost invisible, as Margot Aaron would say, because you're actually continuing that conversation they have with themselves.
Well, the other thing that comes to mind on this is that people underestimate how willing their prospects are. I was going to use willing again, and I don't know if that's a complete sentence. So let's just say how willing their prospects are willing. Get some good marketing speak over here. Oh, God.
Right like you talk.
Yeah, right like you talk. You should not look at our Descript transcripts because we should not write like we talk. Oh, goodness. So anyways, how willing your prospects are to talk about their problems on social. Like if you don't lead with a pitch, if you don't lead with a look at me, oh God, I'm so special, buy from us because we do this for you. But instead it's, hey, sometimes I chat with sales leaders like you and this is what they say. Is that true?
Yeah.
And it's harder to nail the tonality, the intent in a text message. This is why a lot of people are increasingly recommending video prospecting or audio messages inside LinkedIn, because you can communicate that tonality or that intent behind the question. But in our experience, I mean, we do plenty of this over text, and just, basically texting with prospects and learning, right? So Josh Braun's show earlier this week, he was talking about seeking the truth. And this is like a great way to frame it, because this is actually how I always thought about it from a brand perspective, which is you're trying to find the people who actually have the problem that you solve. And chances are, in your list, in any market, in any industry, there's only going to be some people who have the problem that you actually solve, because of timing, because of budget, because of priorities, because of all the reasons and excuses that prospects have not to buy.
I want to clarify that list of 20 that you have includes this.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like these are the people that you actually want to talk to, that are experiencing or are related to this problem.
Or they're just showing signs and symptoms that the problem exists. And that's all prioritization is what are those customers that show that are in that sandbox that you've created, that you win more often than not, that you can really help with. But that's that prioritization. So if you have 20 accounts, do you know without a doubt, which one you should start with?
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you,
Mm-hmm.
that's hard. And honestly, it takes a lot of work to figure that out. But once you get it, you're good.
You're good. And that's the thing. Like, think about this. If you have, so one of the exercises we do, and we've talked about this before, is inside an account, once you've identified these accounts, you're actually tiering out your leads by people who are active on social or who are lurkers on social, right? And you can even have a top tier of people who are posting, but mostly you want to just see people who are actually active on social. Then what you're trying to do is you're using those personas, whether or not they're your buyers' personas or your champions or your mobilizers, whether or not they have the right job title necessarily, to do account research, to get to know the account, to validate your hypothesis, your assumption that, yes, this account is a priority and I think it's true for these reasons. But as Josh Braun says, seek the truth. Is that true? Let me go talk with some folks. Let me connect with somebody. Let's shoot them a DM. Let's have a conversation. Let's see what they say.
Even if you do this on an industry level, smack that mic, Morgan. But even if we do this on an industry level, if we're talking about what's changing in sales, if I don't have a point of view on what's changing in sales, why would I have a view on what's changing in your company? It starts at the top and it works its way down. It's like when we talk about social listening and getting credibility at scale. Really, what like the credibility piece is knowing who people trust for industry knowledge and professional development. And so that's the high level. Company news, every company page is just a shitstorm of useless information about the company. This is our solution. Actually, it reminds me of like Finding Nemo. Moin, 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 moin. And then on the professional development, this is the hard part. Because if you really look at who people trust in the market for their professional development, it's not a big list. And ironically, as we've learned going through conferences and networking, they all know each other too. Just in case you're selling to any of them, they talk. But how is that any different than the VPs you're talking to? CEO, C-suite. The moment that we deny human nature in our go-to-market is the moment we've prioritized our company and what we feel is right versus what is right for us psychologically.
This is interesting because this actually folds really nicely in with some of the marketing conversation, which is like, Nick gives me this look like, marketing? What are you talking about? We're back to marketing again? Goodness. So the problem is most marketing departments don't actually drive revenue or qualified pipeline, right? They
have a limited view.
They have a very limited view. And some marketing departments are really good, but in my estimation, I think a lot of marketing programs get lucky and then they try and scale some of that luck, and then they can't replicate that luck because I know it's a spicy take, but what the problem that leads, and this is what we see most of the time, is when that sort of marketing program doesn't have a clear perspective on the market, doesn't have a clear insight as to why the problem exists and what to do about it for their prospects, and also the competitive advantage of the product, the way that they're differentiating themselves from their competitors, then sales messaging sounds a lot like marketing's messaging, because it's not actually, I mean, I do not like the term like sales driven marketing, like that's just like jargon. But think about it, like, how, if a seller approached, I don't know if you heard that, but if a seller approached um a prospect, how is that being folded into the marketing lingo? And this is why like social is a great ground of experimentation, because you can use natural language, natural cadences that people are talking about their problems, and then repurpose that into your sales cadences, your sales messaging, your marketing messaging, even, and so on.
Well, like all the time that we've talked to marketing teams and we're like, well, you got to provide air cover. If you're providing this air cover and, we're coming in, we're working on a single campaign. It's a single effort. We're rowing in the same direction, which if we're all rowing in different directions, we're not going to go far. But if we're all rowing in the same direction, it adds up. But that was our initial fight when we first started B2B Power Hour, is why are you going this way and I'm going this way and we just never align ever? Why are you getting paid if you're not helping me? And this sounds harsh, but this was our I don't know, our therapy of like, why is sales marketing, where's the disconnect? And it's like when we were talking to companies in the past 2 weeks about account based. Like, well, we're supporting everybody with this air cover on account based. I'm like, no, you're selling shit solutions at scale on your pages, missing the whole point. If they're problem aware, they still need to go and have a really strong understanding of that problem even more right now, because there's too many options. And they need to understand that problem so well that the options for the solutions gets down to a short enough list that it's not overwhelming. So most people just stop there. So your marketing actually is more harmful than anything else. We've had it lots when I would go and sell in a campaign, and marketing would send these emails that were useless and misaligned to anything. And if any one of those idiots would have talked to me, I would have told them that they just stop. Don't even do anything, because you guys have obviously not talked to our customers. And I've even had executives get frustrated that we had their emails at all, because I put the information in the CRM, and all of a sudden they got emails completely irrelevant to what we're talking about at a volume that makes you want to throw up. And they're like, why would you do this to me? They place their trust in us in sales having these one-on-one conversations, and we break it by sending them marketing garbage. And don't get me wrong, sales does this too. Lots of SDRs send garbage emails that shouldn't happen. But if we really think about it on an account-based level, as we're doing our account scrub, as we're doing our research, what do they need to know to make a confident decision to buy us?
And a lot of the time, I just want to be really clear at a tactical level. Like, the things that they need to know are very rarely product and feature information.
Very rarely.
There might be a couple of product or feature sets, particularly if they're like a competitive differentiator. Like if you're in a market and there's 3 competitors and you have something that's a product or feature set that your competitors don't, and it's a key selling point, then yeah, that might be one of the things you talk about. But most of the time, it's about their pain, it's about the problem, it's about the status quo. As Nick's famous questions around here, like, why change? Why now? Why you? Because the reason that we're feeling, I guess, a little spicy today and a little savage about all this is that all of this is a strategy level, right? These are strategic questions. And so when they're not executed properly at the organizational level, at the executive level, it filters down to the individual seller, who then has to figure out what to do on their own. And you know,
Give me some PTSD
your
here.
PT. But how often we've met with sellers, how often we've met with sales organizations that are trying to sell a product on the merits of the product, and they don't have a clear picture into what the buyers actually care about, what the
Simply the
pain.
best.
We're simply the best.
Better than all the rest. You know how many marketing campaigns are based on that alone?
It's true. It's true. So many marketing campaigns are just based on that. And the I don't know if you can hear our lovely background noise, but
That wasn't bad at all.
no, that was
Wow,
interesting.
That was a pleasant surprise.
We don't know what's getting picked up on this or not. So in case you heard that I believe that was a train.
That can be confirmed.
That, so as you can tell, we're having fun this Friday, recording this power hour. So the challenge is, I personally don't believe that it should only be on the individual seller to figure out the answers to these questions. But because organizations and leadership and executives so often fail to answer these questions properly, it comes back to the individual seller. Sometimes an SDR, but often, most often it's the full cycle account executive. Because while, especially, if you're doing SOG cons like full cycle BDR play, but basically anybody who's full cycle, because now it's not just about something that's a breadcrumb that piques somebody's interest. You actually have to have a good sales conversation that gets them to buy. And it's so clear that everything falls apart when those prerequisites are not set up. And those prerequisites being, do you actually understand your prospect's pain? And can you articulate it in a way that they would articulate? Do you understand why your company is better than your competitors, how you differentiate yourself, why that buyer should purchase from you compared to other competitors? Sometimes that's product feature set, but oftentimes it's a lot of other things about timing and budget and lots of other organizational capabilities. And then lastly, like, like, do you have a sense about the kind of buyers that you should target? And kinds of buyers being job titles, kinds of buyers being psychographics, like how they believe, how they perceive, how they talk about the world, kinds of buyers being technographics or firmographics, so those accounts, those personas within those accounts. Because if you solve a lot of those questions up front, which is what we do in our work, when you solve those questions up front, now when it comes to channel selection, where we started today, when it comes to using social, email, phone, whatever else, that doesn't matter as much. That all flows from this foundational work.
Yeah. And that's it. We're done. That's it. But
we're done. Signed, sealed, delivered. Bye.
But that's why whenever the gentleman asked, like, were we worried? If LinkedIn was gone tomorrow, would it kill our business?
Yeah.
No. Because we have realized that LinkedIn is the biggest opportunity right now. It won't be forever. It honestly won't. Is it going to be a year or two? Is Microsoft going to make it better or worse? I don't know. I have hope that, because I know there's good people that work at LinkedIn that really want to see it succeed, that they're going to push to make it better and keep making it better. But that still doesn't get away from the fact that the basics need to be done first. And honestly, you guys, my onboarding sucked too. Yeah. My onboarding was, they called it throw you against the wall, see what sticks, because we were 100% commission and we just ate what we killed. And if you didn't fit, they didn't believe in training. Their training was garbage. They just told us if you went and talked to 100 people, you should go and have 20 that are interested. You should have, I can't think, it was 10 meetings. And then eventually you'll get like 3 sales. I'm like, I feel like we need to have a talk about your list building, because if you're talking to 100 to get 2 sales, we had a problem. But it's basics. Honestly, it just comes down to the basics. And the more we do work, the more I realize that the basics are just missing. And I don't blame anyone for it, because it's hard. Like figuring out your TAM, figuring out of your TAM, which you can actually service right now, figuring out how to break them into verticals that are bite-sized so you can make the best bet, because we have limited resources and time. And then take that down to the personas in those individual companies that we need at different levels to make this work, not just to sell, but also to see the full value of the sale. Really, in sales, we're change management. And when we get away from the basics, we sell ourselves short because now we're selling half or a fraction of the real value that we bring. We also bring a fraction of the value of the conversation that we can bring, whether it's our domain knowledge or if it's even just being relevant in the market. Like there's so much that goes into being a great seller other than being extroverted, because we've all learned is that's changed. And you don't just have to be a phone master. You don't have to go and like persuade people, because people can see through that.
Well, the other thing that comes to mind, which, if you'll indulge me for a moment, do they have a choice? No, you don't. So you're going to indulge me for a moment. If you go to getalign.co, GETALIGND.co, we put together a thesis. This is the thesis for our consulting business. And one of the key parts that Nick is pointing to is that buyers have constructed this brick wall, what we call the brick wall. And the problem is that the brick wall actually was constructed because of success. So the brick wall is a mental spam filter. It tunes out the non-applicable. And that's because we're all overwhelmed. Like literally every pitch has ended up in everybody's inbox twice. There's enough Netflix shows to watch until you're dead. The news is constantly churning out new stuff. Their Twitter, goodness. Let alone you log into your LinkedIn feed and it seems like there's 30 new accounts posting interesting things all of the time. So there's just this fire hose of information. And the reality is we can't deal with that. Our brains cannot deal with that much information. Amen. We literally, we just become overwhelmed and overloaded. And so the very natural way that we do, and the way that buyers handle this problem, is that they tune out the stuff that they think is non-applicable. And they only pay attention to the voices and the people that they trust, the credible voices in those circles. Oftentimes they're peers. Sometimes there's influencers. Sometimes there's somebody who writes a really good blog or writes a really good book. There's not there is a rhyme or reason. It comes back to trust and credibility, but it's not that they have to have a specific title or that they work at a specific company, right? Mm-hmm. And what Nick is pointing to is that in this world where buyers have the brick wall, the way that we have to sell has changed. It's no longer enough to spin up a sequencer and pitch and dial your numbers back and do some sort of predictable revenue thing. If it works, it's going to work once. The challenge is figuring out what will work 10 times, what will work 100 times, what is consistent, repeatable, predictable. And predictable not in like the, we need this many people, but what are the strategies or frameworks that I can use that actually generate pipeline? And in a digital world, sellers no longer can rely on simply one channel or one tactic to reach their buyers. And that has changed. As I said, it came out of success. HubSpot, I don't want to blame HubSpot too much about this, but HubSpot's inbound marketing program created a lot of success for people. It worked. And then out of it working so well, everybody got on and it created competitive failure. And so now we're all overwhelmed with blogs and thought leadership and this endless deluge of information, the inbound engine. And now lots and lots of buyers are tuning that out. And so obviously this lends credibility to the idea of like using social and having an individual seller create credibility as the individual on behalf of the company, because that's how buyers are thinking today. But more importantly, as a seller, it's no longer about one channel. It's no longer about one approach. The golden approach, the unicorn approach. Here's the one true tried success that you need in order to sell all of your wildest dreams. Like that doesn't exist.
It even shows up in workflows. So one thing that I've realized as sales that we've sold ourselves short is we don't communicate what we learn. So there's micro learnings in every time that we go prospect. I go show up at a job site. When I used to sell insurance, I say something stupid. Don't say something stupid again. I change it up. And I keep saying something stupid till I find something that's not. And honestly, that's fail fast, get smarter, right? That's how you have to learn. But where is that being shared? So if you're my marketer and you're putting out stuff that sounds stupid, whose fault is that? No, but seriously, whose fault is that? If I learned out in the field with real customers that wasn't what was right, that wasn't the right thing to say, and I never tell you, who's selling who short? And so this is kind of what I was hinting at earlier of the bigger conversation. There needs to be a weekly exchange. So if you have a BDR that's building pipeline for you, booking those meetings for you as an AE, who's your marketer? Who's on the marketing team that's providing that air cover at whatever level? Who's your marketer that you're exchanging information?
And just to clarify it real quick, this is not about being account based. I mean, obviously, this is very important if you're doing account based.
It's even more effective if you're account based.
Even more effective if you're account based. But if you're running outbound as a campaign because of your ACV, you still need marketing air cover. And that marketing still needs to be designed from the same learnings that the sellers need to learn. Right? Or, sorry, that sentence did not make sense.
I knew where you were going.
But he knew where I was going, so we're on the same page. The reality is I did. I know.
It's gonna be an entertaining day.
It's gonna be a good day. The problem is when top of funnel activities are misaligned, when marketing is not on the same page as sales, or what it creates, and I'm gonna just you get to indulge me because there's no other option here.
I have an opinion on this too, but let's see.
It creates a disjointed customer experience or disjointed brand experience. And like this was if there was anything that I actually cared the most about in my brand strategy days, it was this topic, which was at each stage of the buying journey, is it consistent and is it aligned with the expectations of the buyer? And most often it's not, right? You'll see a great ad, but then the sale. And so next week, we're doing another content power hour with our friends at Beam, Brooklyn and Sam. And we've audited a number of companies' inbound process, right? Their content, their messaging, their social, and then their inbound sales process. And sometimes the inbound sales process is extremely effective, but the marketing doesn't support it. Or the marketing is really great, but then the inbound sales process feels really disjointed and archaic because of what the marketing sort of created that expectation. Oh, we're a modern company. Oh, we think about these things in these ways. The reason that it's so important to create that experience is that you want the buyers to feel like they're shopping at Amazon. Like that's sort of the heuristic, the shortcut you think about. Make it easy, make it seamless. The only way to do that is with sellers and marketers sharing their learnings with each other.
I'm also going to go a step further.
Let's go.
Where this shows up is what's your closing ratio? So when we go and work with companies and I start digging into their pipeline and they have a 20% closing ratio, and they're like, yeah, but we need 5x on pipeline to go and hit goals. I was like, no, you just need less shit in your pipeline so you can focus more on the right people. But this is purely comes down to targeting and lack thereof. Because if we had better targeting, marketing would be able to do a better job. Sales would be able to do a better job. And customer success would be less pissed off about the whole process.
They're like, why are you bringing these people in?
I've told you guys, stop selling this shit.
I mean, how many times have we heard that? Oh, goodness.
Even with enablement.
Oh.
Like, they just want me to create more content.
It's a waking nightmare. But that the thing that we're continuing to point to is that companies So there's a couple of challenges here. There's the strategic sort of level of workflow and alignment, and I feel like we've beaten that stake into the ground today. But there's the more tactical level of the workflow. What are the workflows that sellers are using and marketing is using, and how are they on the same page? And a lot of the times what we hear and what we see, and this might be true in your organization, is, oh, our sales team is too busy. Oh, our sellers
I've
are
never heard that one before.
he's never heard that. Oh, our sellers don't have time to
Oh, yeah.
do that.
It takes way too much time. We wish we could do that, but it just takes way too much time. So what are you busy doing? Outreach that is being ignored? That sounds like a lot of time doing nothing useful.
Right. Spicy. He had his coffee this morning too, I think.
I don't have time. It just blows my mind. Is it because you're wasting time on shit you shouldn't have been doing? Like it hurts a little bit when we talk about raising the profession and you see the level of sales that's going on right now. By no fault of the seller. It's getting pushed to do too much by not having this targeting, by not being able to prioritize yourself and guide on metrics that are useful. Meetings don't create sales on their own. There's a lot of shit meetings that should have never happened. I've seen honestly, when I've cracked open the CRM in a couple of companies we've worked with, 50% of the meetings should have never happened. And they were brought in with the wrong intent. Like they should have been doing fact gathering to build a business case to go up to executives, but they were trying to sell to below the power line and it died. I wonder why. But this, like if we go really dive into the workflow and we talk about exchange. So you're in the morning, you're posting content and now you're doing your social listening and you're getting into the influencers and you're figuring out who's trusted in the world that you sell in. Do your marketers know that? Does your executive team know that? Did you find somebody new? Did a new content cluster pop up or a keyword or something that you should be showing up in? Did you share that? Is it relevant on other channels than just LinkedIn? Is that something that should be on your YouTube? Is that something that should go and be on your TikTok? Is that something relevant in other places? Is it something that you should start investing in from a content standpoint? Or is it something that should be part of your customer journey and redefined? So now you've got your influencers, you got your social listening, you've done your comments. Now you're going midday and you're doing your accounts. You're working on your accounts and you figure out there's a new persona based on your win-loss analysis in the last 5 deals that keeps showing up, that when they participate and they champion, that magically deals get across the finish line in record speed. Who did you tell? Did you tell your other friends in the same verticals? Did you tell somebody in another vertical to go and see if that was true for them as well? Or did they have someone else? Now, did we tell marketing that as well so that we can go and start doing, if we're doing account based or if we're just doing another campaign, that the wording is put into something that they appreciate? That's something that it's almost like we were joking about accents. Think of your content like an accent. If it sounds funny, come on, if it sounds funny, they're going to ignore it. And so we got to think about it like that, is we have to put it in their own words so that it resonates. Because if it doesn't resonate, doesn't sound like them, it's not credible.
One of the tools that we see is really effective and something that we work on. I mean, full disclosure, we do this, but also for the companies we work with is to create a capture document. There's lots of different things you can call it, but that capture document, it can be a long Google Doc. It could be a library. I mean, the technology doesn't matter, but the concept is somebody could go in there and learn the ways that people are talking about their problems or the ways that people are finding traction, that sellers are finding traction inside the marketplace.
You didn't use a Star Wars reference on that one.
A Star Wars reference?
Yeah.
Oh, like,
you need time to think about it. It's all good. Like the young Padawan, like
the young,
like going in and like Yoda going and giving him, use the Force.
Oh,
this is the Force.
I was like, what is Nick talking about? Okay, yeah, that's
really
a good scene.
Have his coffee.
No,
Jesus.
Okay, so
wasn't even late last night either. So the time change did kind of.
Well, yeah, but no, we digress. So this can be a really tactical piece inside your entire go-to-market, and the idea is that you have a document or a series of documents, if you have multiple verticals, in which you're capturing insights about your customers, and then those insights get used and reused, developing messaging, creating content on social for both the company and the individual, creating marketing campaigns, running marketing campaigns, all of those things. Like, the thing that needs to happen is there's a lot of information here in our brains, and there's collectively a lot of information in our brains. Kyle Williams, friend of the show, often calls that a shadow ICP, which is that the individual seller has a good sense about who the right person is to talk to, but it's different than the formal ICP that the company itself promotes.
Never happens.
That never happens. What? I've
What?
never heard that before. What? Crazy. But to be able to download all of that shadow ICP knowledge into a document and then intentionally use that as an organization. And even, I'll be honest with you, the great first step here is not necessarily having marketing and sales do it together, but just to have the sales team do it together. Because there's so many sellers, especially in a remote environment, who struggle, who suffer in silence, as we talk about here a lot, who don't have that information to share with one another. This is a great first step to get the sales team going after a specific persona or industry vertical to be on the same page about what are buyers talking about, what do they care about.
Ooh. So Morgan ran this experiment. Well, we ran this experiment, but Morgan kicked its ass. So we did this experiment on trust. And so I was telling Morgan that there's different levels of trust in messaging, and not just, it's the medium, not just the message. So if I get an introduction or referral, that is my golden, like that's what I always, like that's how I break into accounts fast, is I get somebody lower to introduce me up. And I can do it usually in less than a week. It's my fun game, but it's understanding the level of trust. What is on the lowest level? Cold outreach of someone that's never talked to you before that you're hitting. Even if it's great messaging, it's still the lowest level of trust. And there's varying levels in between. But we realize when it comes to social that there's 3 levels. I'm going to let Morgan explain this because it was like, it was so good.
The trust?
Yeah.
Okay.
How you were scoring accounts.
Oh, yeah. So, thank you. We're trying to do our best here on this impromptu recording. Adjusting the microphone here. So, the thing I think about, by the numbers, 1%, 9%, 90%.
Mm-hmm.
So 1%, and everybody has their own favorite. These are the ones we use. It's something like this. 1% of people are actually posting content. 9% of people are commenting, engaging, liking. They're active on the platform. They actually use it.
They were there.
There's proof they were there. And then 90% of people are lurkers. And those are the profiles you go to that haven't posted, that haven't commented, that probably log in every once in a while.
Usually your mobilizers.
They're usually your mobilizers. And actually, unfortunately, there's so many that have Sales Navigator licenses or LinkedIn Premium, but they're not active, which is crazy to us. But what you do... He's like, yeah, I get it. So what you're doing is you're taking a look at your account, and you're the 5 to 10 people or the 20 people, or the number of people that you want to go after, and you create a lead list inside Sales Navigator. This is actually how I use lead lists. There's 2 ways to use lead lists. One is persona based across multiple different accounts, and then the other is account specific. So it depends on the kind of outbound motion you're running, if it's a campaign or if it's account based. Anyways, you're tiering out those leads. So tier 1 are the 1%ers. Tier 1 are the people who are actually posting content. You are going to be golden lucky if your account has a tier 1. It is not common by the numbers that an account has a tier 1.
At all. Like at all.
At all. Because it's such a small fraction of people. And this is why I think sellers get all tripped up on LinkedIn.
And that doesn't count resharing shit content from the company page.
That's a tier 2. Tier 2s are reshares, 100%. So tier 1s are people who are actually posting organic content. The reason that's important in especially if they're part of the buying committee or the target list, is that you can use comment plays to warm up that lead and break into the account with them. But most of the time, your leads are going to be tier 2s or tier 3s. And so tier 2s are those who are resharing content, commenting, liking, or whatever. And then tier 3s are the lurkers. And so inside the lead list, you can add notes to the individual lead. And all that I'm doing is I'm saying tier 1, that's self-explanatory. Tier 2 with like brackets or parentheses explaining what they do, liking, commenting, what do they share about, what do they, focus on. And then tier 3s of like lurkers, basically. Now we can be strategic about how we're reaching out to the people in our account, because we see, oh, these tier 2s are active on LinkedIn. These tier 2s I can get in front of depending upon how they're engaging. Maybe it's a direct outreach if the timing's right, but probably most of the time it's warm up, indirect, comments. And then tier 3s are lurkers, which you can use content to get in front of.
So the thing that hit me as I was listening to Morgan explain this in one of our sessions, I was like, holy shit, that's a 10x. By focusing on the 10% or less, because you'll even prioritize that, because there's different qualities of tier 1 and 2, you're prioritizing less than 10% of the available market to hit the whole 100%. Hell yes. Like, it seems like such a no-brainer. And when you change your methodology of how you're approaching the market and adjusting that go-to-market to align with that, now you have more room to play. You're also showing up in a way that's more meaningful, because when people sign into LinkedIn, you say this all the time, they don't come to get sold, pitch slapped, hear you talk all about yourself.
Moin?
Yeah, moin, moin, moin. I just think of a couple of the emails I've gotten recently. Hey, I'd like to tell you how amazing I am. You don't realize how amazing I am, but I'd like to offer you a free meeting, free, once in a lifetime free meeting for 15 minutes so you can tell me a little bit about yourself and I can tell you a whole lot about how amazing I really am. Not exactly awe-inspiring, right? But
the reason this is a 10x is because this is actually so this did show up in Nate Nasralla's library of uncommon sales plays, which if you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. It's incredible. Unreal. The way that we are thinking about social in this play is you don't start with content and you don't start with direct outreach.
Amen.
Those are the mistakes. People, sellers who use social as a channel, think it works like email. So they do direct outreach as the first. Then they start creating content because they realize, oh, maybe I have to warm them up. Then I do more prospecting. I try and break into big accounts. That's how most sellers we see use LinkedIn. And the problem with that is the content takes too long to hit quota, and the direct outreach doesn't work because the platform's not designed for that.
Yes.
You need Nick's just like, yeah, war chant over here. But the reality is that if you start instead with tier 1s and tier 2s, just active leads and personas inside the account, not necessarily even the correct job titles you need to sell to, but breaking into the account just based on people who are active and just engaging with them, having good conversations.
Test your hypothesis, build out your account research, dive deeper into your account scrub, and then get a referral or an introduction because you've earned the right to do so.
Golden opportunity.
It moves fast. That is how you take something that normally takes you 6 months to a year, and it magically only takes you, honestly, most accounts that I break into is less than a week. But realistically, if you even set a 60-day horizon, that's depending on how big the account is. Like if you're strategic accounts, that's more realistic. But that's just to go and break in and start the conversation. That's not necessarily to sell. I think that's where people misunderstand. Breaking in and routing in is having people that you can talk to, that trust you, that will feed you that information to build that business case if it now is the right time.
And that all starts just with your understanding of mapping out the people within the account to see who's active and who's not. Because now here's the magic. The tier 3s, the lurkers. This is where we started today, and this is where we'll end today since we're close to time, is content. if you know that your lurkers have a profile and they log in every once in a while, particularly those with LinkedIn Premium but don't use it, they're going to be looking at your content. They're never going to like it. They're never going to comment it. They're never going to engage with it. But what they are eventually going to do is they're going to become inbound leads. It's not every lurker, but that's how content is a one-to-many nurture sequence, or a one-to-few nurture sequence, I guess, if you wanted to be really specific about it. Because even if you can break in with the tier twos, you're nurturing, educating, all the rest of it before that deal enters pipeline with all of your other key buying personas who are active on the network. But people start with that, or they start with the direct outreach without much critical thought about who's even active and how do I engage with them. If the highest level of trust is a referral and a warm introduction, then breaking into an account with the highest level of trust means earning a referral or an introduction. And so you're just doing the strategic work to figure out who is that person that I can break in with.
Amen.
I got an amen and a hallelujah over here. Well, we're at the end of our time today. Thank you for joining on this fun, impromptu, spicy, hot take filled B2B Power Hour. Yeah, we're in Boston and it's been a good time. Nick, you want to close us out?
Maybe it's Cambridge and Harvard inspiring us to be a little spicy today. But normally, my normal close is, and I still want to say, like, it's 2022. You don't need to suffer in silence. If you need help, please reach out. Please. We're here. We want to help you. So you don't need to buy anything. Get in our DMs, shoot us a connection request. Just let us know that you need help and that you're not going to just pitch slap us. And we would love to support you. But we actually need a little help from you guys. Something that we don't normally ask, but we're looking to grow the show and help more people. And the only way that happens is by you guys. And we would love a referral, just like what we had talked about today. If you get value from our show, if you love our guests, and even if you have recommendations for guests, we'll take that as well. But we would love for you to refer just one person that you feel like would get a lot of value from our show, and tell them what you love about us. Tell them what your favorite episode was, and that would mean a lot to us.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for, you can tag them in the comments. You can send them in DMs, however you want to do that. We so appreciate that. And thank you for being here on this lovely Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. We'll see you next week.